The narrative begins with Rebecca Mitchell, a woman of 32 who had long occupied the unenviable position of the family's designated underdog. On a particular sunny Sunday, at her parents' Hampton estate, while her siblings sported designer labels, Rebecca wore a simple dress. When their uncle Richard announced the sale of his downtown building, her brother James couldn't resist a condescending remark, whispering that she couldn't possibly afford such a property. They remained oblivious to the substantial real estate portfolio Rebecca had quietly built, hidden behind the facade of her modest car and small apartment. Before delving into the pivotal events that followed, the story invites the listener to connect if tales of family dynamics resonate, and to consider subscribing for a narrative about finding one's footing. The Mitchells were not merely wealthy, they were rooted in old money, their legacy tied to Manhattan real estate spanning 4 generations, complemented by a significant investment banking arm established by her grandfather in the 1960s. Her father, William Mitchell, had expanded the family enterprise with a calculated, often ruthless approach that proved effective in business but detrimental to family life. Her mother, Eleanor, hailed from a similar lineage. Her father, a shipping magnate who gauged worth by connections and appearances. Together, they cultivated an environment where success was narrowly defined and competition among siblings was actively encouraged. James, the eldest at 38, had mirrored their father's career path, becoming a senior investment banker with the attendant corner office and inflated ego. Victoria, 36, pursued medicine, establishing herself as a plastic surgeon catering to the Upper East Side elite, effectively commodifying beauty under her control. Michael, the youngest sibling at 34, had ventured into technology, launching and successfully selling a startup before his 30s, positioning himself as the innovative one while remaining within the family's accepted professional spheres. And then there was Rebecca, who, despite graduating summa cum laude from Wharton, had defied expectations by declining prestigious corporate offers to work for a small urban planning firm. This choice was often lamented by her mother at social gatherings as a waste of potential, while her father would introduce her last at family functions, a noticeable lack of enthusiasm in his tone. The annual family business meeting was a tradition initiated by her grandfather decades prior, ostensibly to update the family on their holdings. It had, however, evolved into a thinly veiled arena for sibling rivalry and seeking parental approval. Arriving at the Hampton estate that Sunday, in her reliable Honda Civic, Rebecca immediately felt the familiar weight of disapproval. Her father's greeting, as she stepped onto the pristine gravel driveway, was a pointed inquiry about her car, while her simple sundress drew her mother's critical gaze. An offer to assist with a down payment on a more suitable vehicle was extended, managing to sound more like a reprimand than generosity. Rebecca smiled and embraced them, years of similar comments having rendered her immune. She stated her preference for her car, noting it served her purpose before carrying her own bag inside, declining the hovering staff's offer of help. What her family failed to grasp was that her choices were not born of constraint, but of deliberate intent. Witnessing the hollowness behind her siblings' materialism during her college years, she had made a private commitment to build something of true substance on her own terms. Her outwardly modest lifestyle was not a sign of struggle, but a calculated strategy, a fact she guarded closely as she moved through the familiar corridors of her childhood home. She exchanged warm greetings with Maria, the longtime housekeeper who had offered her more maternal comfort than her own mother ever had. The family's persistent assumption of her financial struggles had initially been irksome, but had unexpectedly become an advantage she carefully cultivated. As she settled into her old bedroom that weekend, still decorated with teenage memorabilia, unlike her siblings' rooms, which had been converted to luxurious guest suites, she felt a quiet certainty beneath her practiced humility. The carefully maintained illusion of her modest life was poised to serve her in ways her status-obsessed family could never have anticipated. The Mitchell estate spanned 3 acres of prime Hampton's coastline, a sprawling colonial revival with 12 bedrooms, indoor and outdoor pools, tennis courts, and meticulously maintained gardens. Crystal chandeliers, illuminated coffered ceilings, Persian rugs, adorned Brazilian hardwood floors, and museum-worthy artwork decorated walls clad in silks and brocades. While her siblings quickly dispersed to their usual haunts within the estate, Rebecca found herself drawn to the kitchen. There, Carmen, the family's chef of 20 years, greeted her with genuine warmth and surprise. Unlike her family members, who often treated staff as little more than their function, Rebecca had always found solace in the connection with the people who truly kept the estate running. She spent an hour assisting Carmen with appetizers, catching up on personal milestones her parents remained unaware of, despite 2 decades of employing the chef. The formal dinner that evening was an exercise in barely concealed tension, disguised as polite conversation. Cousins, aunts, and uncles joined the immediate family, presenting an impressive display of wealth and privilege. An aunt, Patricia, called across the expansive mahogany table, inquiring about Rebecca's continued employment at the small urban planning firm, her tone dripping with condescension. Before Rebecca could respond, Victoria interjected with practiced conversational maneuvering, suggesting some people preferred stability. The slight pause before the final word, turning it into a veiled criticism of Rebecca's perceived lack of ambition. Rebecca smiled, taking a sip of wine, her mind momentarily drifting back to a pivotal realization during her junior year at Wharton. While her peers competed for coveted internships, Rebecca had taken an urban economics elective with Professor Frank Williams, a former developer who had successfully revitalized neglected neighborhoods before entering academia. Professor Williams had emphasized that real estate was about more than just property. It was about vision, seeing potential where others saw only problems. Under his guidance, she began to view her family's real estate legacy differently, not as an entitlement, but as a model to refine. Where her ancestors had built primarily for profit, she envisioned transformations that could benefit communities while still yielding returns. After graduating, she used her trust fund, originally designated for a New York apartment, to secretly purchase her first property, a dilapidated duplex in Newark, the kind of asset her family would have dismissed as worthless. With Professor Williams's remote guidance and her own hands-on work alongside hired contractors, she learned every facet of development from the ground up. The duplex sold for a substantial profit 6 months later, and more importantly, provided affordable housing for working families. The present conversation pulled her back as James regaled the table with details of his latest yacht purchase, emphasizing its speed to Uncle Richard, whose admiration he particularly sought. Her other siblings shared their own accomplishments: Victoria's new medical spa, Michael's angel investment in a tech company. Rebecca observed them all with the detachment gained from years of cataloging their insecurities. James's craving for validation, Victoria's insecurity masked by perfection, Michael's calculated ambition, her father's cold pragmatism, and her mother's preoccupation with status. The dynamic shifted when Uncle Richard, her father's younger brother, and the family's independent developer, cleared his throat, immediately commanding attention. He announced his intention to sell the Harrington Building downtown, a prime 20-story commercial property that had been in his portfolio for decades. As coffee and dessert were served, speculation about the building's value and potential buyers dominated the conversation, with James and her father already discussing possible family syndication. Rebecca listened attentively, then asked a single question that drew surprised glances: inquiries about the current occupancy rate and the terms of existing commercial leases. Uncle Richard appeared momentarily taken aback by her informed question, but James quickly cut in. raising his whiskey glass with a dismissive smirk, remarking that Rebecca was always the analyst, but couldn't actually do anything with such information. His comment drew knowing chuckles, perfectly setting the stage for the meeting scheduled for the following morning, where her family's perception of her was about to undergo a radical change. Her grandfather's study remained a relic of old world power, its walls lined with leather-bound books and hunting trophies. The massive mahogany desk, now occupied by her father, holding court. Sunlight filtered through leaded glass, casting patterns across the oriental rug where 3 generations of Mitchells gathered in a horseshoe of leather chairs. Uncle Richard stood beside a projected presentation, detailing the Harrington building with the precision of a seasoned commercial real estate professional. He described the property, its history, and its market valuation. As he displayed floor plans and tenant information, her siblings leaned forward, mentally calculating their potential stakes. When Uncle Richard opened the floor for questions, both Rebecca and James raised their hands simultaneously. Her father, predictably, deferred to his eldest son. James posed technical questions designed to showcase his financial acumen. More technical questions followed from Victoria and Michael, each carefully formulated to demonstrate their business intelligence and financial capability. When the initial round of questions subsided, Rebecca raised her hand again. Uncle Richard, perhaps intrigued, acknowledged her. Rebecca began by inquiring about the building's conversion potential, specifically the upper floors that had been vacant for 3 years. Noting the neighborhood's changing demographics and recent zoning changes, the room fell silent before James erupted in laughter, quickly joined by others. He scoffed at the idea of residential conversion in a Class A commercial building, telling Rebecca to stick to theory and leave the actual deals to the grown-ups. His comment opened the floodgates of condescension. Victoria added with feigned sympathy that not everyone had a head for real business. A cousin chimed in, labeling her the poor one in the family, suggesting someone had to keep the others grounded. What followed was a barrage of thinly veiled insults, wrapped in false concern. An aunt suggested Rebecca could handle public relations, as if offering a consolation prize, acknowledging her creative thinking. Each comment felt like a deliberate blow, echoing the challenges of her first renovation project 7 years prior. She had lived in that Newark duplex during renovations, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, learning electrical wiring from a skeptical master electrician who became a mentor, grappling with permitting and code compliance alongside local builders, and learning to recognize quality materials from a 3rd-generation carpenter. That project had been a more potent education than any Wharton class, teaching her to build a network based on mutual respect rather than family connections. It had also been the genesis of her system for identifying undervalued properties, a methodology combining demographic research, zoning analysis, architectural assessment, and community engagement, approaches her family would deem beneath them. Over the intervening 7 years, she had cultivated relationships with contractors, suppliers, city officials, and community organizations throughout the metropolitan area, creating information channels that alerted her to opportunities long before they reached the traditional market. Her family, meanwhile, remained oblivious, seeing only her modest apartment and clothing, interpreting her independence as limitation rather than conscious choice. Her mother's voice cut through her thoughts and the continuing chorus of dismissive comments. She offered a weak defense, stating Rebecca had always focused on alternative approaches. Not everyone measured success the same way, and surely her small projects were very fulfilling, dear. Her attempt at support stung more than the outright mockery, revealing her fundamental failure to understand Rebecca and what she had built. Rebecca maintained her composure, a skill honed through years of family gatherings, cataloging each dismissive comment as fuel for the revelation to come. She calmly excused herself, rising from her seat as the conversation shifted to speculation about which family members might participate in the Harrington Building acquisition. Her exit went largely unnoticed, which suited her perfectly. She made her way to the guest room where she had stored her briefcase, containing the documentation of 7 years of disciplined work and strategic planning. Beginning with that first duplex, she had reinvested every dollar of profit, gradually scaling from single-family homes to multi-unit buildings, then to small commercial properties, and finally to the mixed-use developments that had become her specialty. Where traditional developers saw rigid boundaries between residential, commercial, and community spaces, she created integrations that maximized both financial returns and livability. Her second-year acquisition of a failing strip mall had been transformed into a community hub with affordable apartments above locally owned businesses, generating strong returns and neighborhood revitalization. By year 4, she had cultivated relationships with select investors who valued her approach, enabling her to scale without compromising her vision or independence. She specialized in identifying buildings with good bones but outdated uses, particularly older office buildings that could be reimagined as residential spaces while preserving architectural character. Each project built her reputation among a network entirely separate from her family's circles, allowing her to navigate deals with a degree of anonymity. Her partnership with Esther Kwan, a brilliant architect who shared her philosophy, had further refined her approach, creating a signature style. Last year's conversion of a neglected 1940s office complex into mixed-income apartments with cooperative workspaces had earned urban design awards and generated a significant return. Gathering the necessary documents, she returned to the study, where the conversation had devolved into technical discussions of financing structures for family participation in Uncle Richard's building. As she re-entered the room, she stated clearly her serious interest in acquiring the Harrington Building, causing several heads to turn with expressions ranging from amusement to confusion. Uncle Richard, ever the businessman, responded first, acknowledging the substantial nature of the property and the asking price. Rebecca affirmed her awareness of the price, placing her leather portfolio on the table. Victoria let out a theatrical sigh, suggesting Rebecca stay in her lane, that everyone had different strengths, and she should focus on what she knew best, leaving major investments to those with experience and capital. Her father remained conspicuously silent. Rebecca turned directly to Uncle Richard, stating her desire for a serious discussion. She revealed she had already toured the property twice and had preliminary plans for a partial residential conversion of the upper floors, maintaining commercial space below with community amenities. The room fell silent as Uncle Richard's eyebrows rose in surprise, noting he hadn't authorized any showings. Rebecca calmly explained that his business partner, Marcus Thompson, had shown her through the previous month, and again last week with her architect and general contractor. The atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Uncle Richard, after a brief text exchange, looked up with new interest, confirming Marcus's account and noting Rebecca had requested confidentiality. This revelation sparked a range of reactions around the room, from amusement to outright hostility. James recovered first, his dismissiveness morphing into suspicion, questioning what game she was playing and asserting she couldn't possibly have the resources for such a property. Rebecca met his gaze steadily, stating this wasn't a game, that the Harrington Building represented precisely the type of property she had specialized in for 7 years, detailing its potential for mixed-use reimagining. Uncle Richard's business partner, Marcus, chose that moment to join the meeting, confirming Rebecca's thorough inspection and inquiring if she had brought the preliminary renderings. The family's confusion deepened visibly as Rebecca produced a tablet displaying conceptual designs. She explained their vision to maintain commercial occupancy on lower floors while converting the upper levels to residential units that preserved the building's architectural integrity. As Uncle Richard and Marcus scrolled through the designs, Rebecca methodically detailed how their plan addressed market demands while respecting the building's history. The concept had been months in development, initiated when Marcus had mentioned Richard's potential sale during an urban planning conference, where Rebecca had been a featured speaker. Her mind briefly recalled a challenging conversion project where structural issues had nearly derailed everything, forcing innovation and personally guaranteed financing. Lessons from that near disaster had refined her due diligence process, evident in the thorough analysis she presented for the Harrington building. Her father finally spoke, his tone careful but tinged with confusion, acknowledging the creativity but emphasizing the financial reality and the need for substantial capital and established banking relationships. Victoria leaned forward with exaggerated concern, suggesting Rebecca was in over her head. James was more blunt, demanding to know where she expected to get $85 million, dismissively calling it a game of Monopoly. Rebecca met each question with calm anticipation. She stated that Mitchell Urban Transformations currently held a portfolio of 17 properties with a combined valuation of $163 million and manageable leverage ratios. She distributed summaries of her company's holdings, professionally prepared listings, complete with valuations and performance metrics. James scanned his copy with narrowed eyes, calling it fabricated. Victoria studied hers, suggesting the properties must be heavily mortgaged. Her mother stared in silent disbelief. Michael, ever analytical, confirmed one of the properties was indeed a well-publicized mixed-use conversion. Before anyone could respond, Rebecca placed the final piece of evidence on the table: a financing pre-approval letter from a major commercial lender for $75 million, specifically for the Harrington building acquisition, with the remaining equity sourced from her company's reserves and select investors. The pre-approval letter created a moment of stunned silence, broken only by Uncle Richard's low whistle, confirming its legitimacy. Rebecca then produced the complete purchase and sale agreement for the Harrington building, already bearing Marcus's initial approval, contingent only on Richard's final signature. She explained they were offering $86 million, $1 million above asking, with a 60-day close and minimal contingencies. The terms demonstrated not just financial capacity, but a strategic understanding of Uncle Richard's priorities: a clean sale, favorable seller financing terms, and provisions allowing him office space during his transition. A technical discussion ensued between Rebecca, Uncle Richard, and Marcus, dramatically shifting the room's dynamic as family members realized they were witnessing a serious negotiation between equals. James attempted to regain control by calling her plan financially reckless. Victoria, following his lead, questioned who was really backing this, implying a boyfriend or partner must be involved. Michael suggested she had traded on the Mitchell name while keeping them in the dark. Rebecca had anticipated every accusation and addressed each one methodically, displaying charts demonstrating conservative leverage ratios and positive cash flow across her portfolio. She stated that Mitchell Urban Transformations was solely owned and operated by her, with investors participating in individual deals through clearly defined limited partnerships that preserved her controlling interest. She showed her company's organizational structure, noting she had deliberately avoided using the Mitchell name professionally until the company was established. Each point was supported by documentation, turning accusations into reluctant acknowledgments. James's hostile questioning about her business model gave her the opportunity to explain her specialized approach to urban redevelopment, identifying undervalued properties in transitional neighborhoods with unrealized potential. She recounted her journey from the first duplex to her current portfolio, highlighting key decisions and her philosophy of preserving architectural integrity while adapting spaces to contemporary needs. This approach, she explained, created properties that commanded premium pricing while contributing to neighborhood revitalization rather than displacement. The complete picture revealed not just financial success, but a coherent vision that contrasted sharply with her family's traditional profit-first approach. The shifting expressions around the room told their own story: shock, disbelief, reluctant recognition, and the first glimmerings of respect, all underscored by the uncomfortable realization that they had profoundly misjudged her for years. The meeting concluded with Uncle Richard requesting time to review the offer in detail. As family members dispersed, the atmosphere had transformed from the familiar hierarchy to an awkward uncertainty. No one quite knew how to interact with the person they had so long dismissed. Rebecca calmly gathered her materials, anticipating the inevitable individual approaches. Her father was the first, lingering until the others had left. His expression held an unfamiliar uncertainty as he struggled to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the businesswoman he had just witnessed. He acknowledged she had built something substantial, his words carrying a mix of pride, embarrassment, and confusion. He asked why she hadn't told them. Rebecca responded simply by questioning whether they would have listened, or insisted she follow the Mitchell way instead of finding her own path. Before he could answer, her mother appeared, her social instincts quickly recalibrating. With breathtaking revisionism, she declared she had always known Rebecca had entrepreneurial spirit, that she was so independent even as a child. Her attempt to retroactively claim support was precisely what Rebecca expected. Her self-image unable to accommodate the reality that she had consistently underestimated her own daughter. Rebecca smiled politely, neither validating her mother's narrative nor challenging it directly. James intercepted her in the hallway, his expression darkened by anger and insecurity. He accused her of deliberately misleading the family, unable to view her success as anything but a personal betrayal. He saw her years of apparent modesty as calculated competition. Rebecca calmly corrected him, stating she had chosen a different path and priorities, and that her family had made assumptions she wasn't obligated to correct. Victoria found her on the terrace later, her approach more measured. She offered a hesitant compliment, acknowledging Rebecca's impressive developments and noting the architectural award for a Jersey City project. Her attempt at professional recognition was genuine but awkward. She admitted she should have paid more attention to Rebecca's work and tentatively suggested collaboration. Rebecca thanked her politely, maintaining the professional boundaries she had carefully established. Michael, always the most pragmatic sibling, approached her with straightforward curiosity. As they walked along the estate perimeter, he asked how she identified her first properties and the metrics she used to evaluate acquisitions. His questions revealed a genuine interest in methodology, rather than ego protection, leading to the most authentic conversation Rebecca had had with a family member in years. He expressed a desire to see one of her completed projects, an olive branch she was inclined to accept. Navigating these new dynamics required a careful balance, accepting the beginning acknowledgement of her accomplishments without seeking validation, maintaining professional boundaries while allowing for potentially healthier family relationships. She was neither vindictive enough to reject initial overtures, nor naive enough to expect immediate transformation. The most telling moment came at dinner that evening. Seating arrangements subtly shifted, placing Rebecca near Uncle Richard. Conversation now included occasional questions about her professional opinion on real estate matters, though still tentative, as if testing the depth of her expertise. Rebecca maintained her calm demeanor, neither gloating nor minimizing her accomplishments. This new reality would take time for everyone to adjust to, particularly for a family so entrenched in its established hierarchy. On the second night, seeking solitude on the moonlit beach, Rebecca was joined by James. He began without preamble, raw wounded pride in his voice, accusing her of making him look foolish. The vulnerability in his accusation surprised her. She turned to face him, seeing beyond his defensive anger to a genuine insecurity. She stated her intention, hadn't been about him, but the Harrington building. He scoffed, bitter that she was now the family success story. Something in his tone prompted her to look closer, seeing an exhaustion and tension she hadn't noticed earlier. She asked what was truly bothering him, setting aside decades of competitive conditioning. His resistance crumbled. He admitted his fund was underperforming, facing significant investor withdrawal. The unspoken consequences loomed large. He confessed he would rather cut off his arm than admit failure to their father. This admission forged a strange new connection, a shared understanding of the pressure of their father's expectations. Their conversation shifted to a rare honesty about the emotional toll of their family's demands. James revealed the constant fear beneath his arrogance, the crushing weight of being the designated successor. Rebecca shared the frustration of years of dismissal, the determination that had fueled her independent path. They weren't suddenly loving siblings, but they were, perhaps, becoming real people to each other for the first time. A similar revelation came the following morning, when Victoria sought her out. Ostensibly discussing potential business collaboration, her carefully maintained facade cracked 20 minutes in. With trembling hands, she confessed her marriage was falling apart, her husband talking about divorce. The perfect life she had projected was crumbling behind the scenes. She spoke of 80-hour work weeks and her husband's feeling of disconnection. Her vulnerability created space for authentic connection. She asked Rebecca how she balanced business success and personal fulfillment, noting Rebecca seemed centered in a way she was not. The question led to their first real conversation as adults, discussing metrics of success beyond money and status. The most profound conversation occurred that afternoon when her parents requested a private meeting in her father's office. Prepared for subtle undermining, Rebecca found them uncharacteristically subdued. Her father formally began, stating they had been reflecting on the family dynamics they had fostered and recognized they might have encouraged unhealthy competition. Her mother was more direct, admitting they had underestimated Rebecca for years, misinterpreting her choices as limitations rather than deliberate decisions, and suggesting they had been measuring success by limited standards. This opening allowed Rebecca to finally express the hurt caused by years of dismissal, recounting specific moments that had cut deeply. She explained she kept her success private because she needed to build something truly hers, measured by her own standards, not the family yardstick. Her parents listened with unusual attention, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time. Rebecca concluded by stating the Mitchell way wasn't the only way to create value, that the buildings she developed improved lives while generating returns, a balance that mattered to her. The conversation marked the beginning of a recalibration in family values, not an instant transformation, but the first acknowledgement that their traditional metrics might be too narrow. The next evening's dinner had a noticeably different tone. Uncle Richard raised a toast, acknowledging Rebecca's vision for the Harrington building and its future. He followed with an unexpected offer to discuss potential partnerships on future projects. This professional recognition, though unsolicited, was valued. Rebecca responded carefully, open to discussing specific projects to test the collaboration, establishing her position as an equal partner. The weekend concluded with new understanding in some relationships, lingering tension in others, and a collective recognition that the established order had permanently shifted. Rebecca maintained her boundaries while allowing for the possibility of healthier connections based on mutual respect. The drive back to her modest apartment carried a different energy. The weight of pretense was lifted, replaced by new possibilities and responsibilities. 3 months later, Rebecca stood in the magnificent Art Deco lobby of the Harrington building, observing construction crews carefully preserving original features while updating infrastructure. The purchase had closed 5 weeks after the family weekend. The project represented her largest undertaking, but meticulous planning ensured it remained within her risk parameters. What had changed was her approach to family involvement. After consideration, she invited Uncle Richard to consult on the commercial portion, leveraging his expertise while retaining decision authority. His input proved valuable, fostering mutual respect. Her father, after careful conversations establishing professional boundaries, provided introductions to international investors, expanding her network while respecting her independence. Most surprisingly, Michael and she developed a genuine collaboration. His tech expertise, streamlining operations across her portfolio. These selective family business interactions remained separate from personal relationships, which evolved at their own pace. Rebecca maintained her modest apartment and practical car, these choices reflecting values she genuinely held, not a facade. The simplicity of her lifestyle was about intentional focus, allocating resources toward impact rather than impression. The family's adjustment was gradual, with occasional relapses requiring firm correction. James struggled most with the new dynamic, his own financial challenges mirroring her success in a complicated way. Their beach conversation had opened a door, but genuine relationship required consistent effort. Victoria, surprisingly, began scaling back her practice hours, prioritizing her marriage and children, recognizing status and income were poor substitutes for presence and connection. Her marriage entered counseling, the outcome uncertain, but the effort genuine. Her parents' evolution came in small moments. Her father asking about community impact. Her mother noting a design magazine feature without mentioning investment return. The shifts were subtle but meaningful. 9 months after the Hampton weekend, they gathered for the soft opening of the Harrington Building's first completed residential floor. Family members toured spaces where former executive offices were transformed into light-filled apartments. The rooftop garden, once exclusive, now offered community space for all residents with spectacular views. Her father acknowledged she had created something remarkable, his comment reflecting genuine admiration. The true healing came not from family validation, but from inner reconciliation. The young woman who felt perpetually judged had used that judgment as motivation to build something authentic. The pain of dismissal pushed her to prove something, ultimately to herself, transforming external criticism into clarity about her values. She found freedom in being underestimated. It gave her space to build without interference. The most meaningful moment in her personal evolution came 6 months after the Harrington revelation, when she established a mentorship program for young women in urban development. At the launch event, she met Zoe Taylor, a brilliant 23-year-old navigating family pressure to follow conventional paths while passionate about community-centered development. Zoe's struggles mirrored her own journey. Rebecca shared lessons learned, emphasizing the courage needed to follow one's vision, even when family doesn't understand. She told Zoe that true wealth wasn't accumulation, but alignment between work and deepest values. Mentoring helped articulate her guiding principles, creating a framework beyond individual projects. The family's wealth was measured in buildings, accounts, and status. Through her independent journey, Rebecca discovered a different definition, integrating financial sustainability with community benefit, personal fulfillment with professional achievement, and independence with meaningful connection. As her portfolio grew and relationships cautiously healed, she recognized the profound truth from years of being dismissed. The poorest aren't those with empty bank accounts, but those with lives rich only in money, never discovering the wealth of purpose and integrity. The narrative ends by posing a question to the listener, inviting them to share their own stories of being underestimated and proving others wrong, suggesting being underestimated can be a gift, providing space to build something authentic. It encourages viewers to like and subscribe for more stories of finding strength in unexpected places, concluding with the thought that true wealth isn't measured by possessions, but by owning who you truly are, and that success without values is mere accumulation, not achievement.